Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. SAG-AFTRA Foundation and BroadwayWorld have partnered for a filmed Conversations Q&A series which celebrates the vibrant theater community here in New York City and the union actors who aspire to have a career on both stage and screen. This event, which is coming from the Robin Williams Center, is a special conversation with two of the entertainment industry's finest actors, Bettany and Jeremy Pope, who are currently electrifying audiences with their stunning portrayals of Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat in Anthony McCartan's new play, The Collaboration, under the direction of Kwame Kwei-Armah from Manhattan Theater Club. Please welcome Bettany and Jeremy Pope. Well, first off, Jeremy, welcome back to Broadway. And Paul, welcome to Broadway. Let's hear it for that, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, The Collaboration is your Broadway debut. How wonderful has it been, Paul?
It's been terrible. No, it's been wonderful. This always felt like a New York story. We, originally we made the play in London, and but it always felt like this was the right space for it. So it's been really wonderful to be embraced by the audience.
Yeah. Now, Jeremy, you're back at the Samuel J. Friedman Theater, where you made your incredible Broadway debut in Choir Boy. How does it feel coming back to where it all began at MTC and being back in the theater again?
Yeah, it's a full circle moment. I think MTC, yes, it was my Broadway debut, but they gave me my first job in 2013. So to kind of have this moment is really special. And like Paul said, we've spent some time doing it in other places. So to know that we're coming to New York, and I've been wanting to get back to Broadway, I just knew it had to be the right thing. After my little stunt of doing 2 shows, I was pretty tired because it's hard and the schedule is tricky. So I wanted it to be, a limited run, if you will, but something that I could really sink my teeth in. And this project presented itself, and to do it with Paul, we've been able to just spend time and really find these characters together. So it's such a beautiful thing to feel so comfortable in this role with him and then bring it to what felt like home, which is Samuel J. Friedman with Lynn Meadow and all of that. So just kind of like a full circle moment.
Are you in the same dressing room?
I'm in the same dressing room. I have the same pillows that I bought in 2018. So it's pretty fun, pretty chill.
Yeah. And how wonderful is it now that you made your Broadway debut there? Now Paul's doing the same thing in the same theater, but you're able to watch him go through this whole thing, what that means to you.
No, it's super cool. Again, we've spent so much time in these roles and getting this script together and just with each other. So, I think I've had my moment in 2018 in this theater. So to kind of share that with Paul is really beautiful. We've just grown to be so close, and just like we've talked about, actually friends forever. So as our show as we're starting to think about our show closing, we're just like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna see each other? And so we're trying to figure that out. But it really has been a beautiful experience. Yeah.
Having Jeremy there for your Broadway debut, Paul, what that's meant to you?
Oh, it's meant everything. I remember coming in on the first day of rehearsal. I hadn't been on stage for 25 years. Still. I mean, I'm 51, but I think a playing age of what, 30? What do we think? Don't laugh. So I was nervous, and I'd learned the whole script for the first day of rehearsals, Jeremy walked in, and we just sort of began, and he had learnt the entire script too. And I thought, well, now we're going to be able to go places together, because now we can play, So yeah, it's been wonderful working with Jeremy. Really is. We've been doing this in different iterations: the film, the play, now the Broadway run, for over a year now, and. Sometimes you're exhausted, and sometimes you're tired of the show. You are, and then it starts, and it's when Jeremy walks on, it's as close to flying in your dreams as as you can get. I don't know. It just he lifts me. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah. I want to go back to the beginning. How did the collaboration happen for each of you? Because these are larger-than-life people. It's Andy Warhol, Jean-Michel Basquiat. I mean, did you say no first, Paul, when this was offered to you?
I did. Yeah. No, I did. I had a dear friend of mine, Dennis O'Sullivan, who is the producer of the movie, and he called me up and said, "Would you like to play Andy Warhol?" And I went, "Absolutely not. No, I don't want to do that." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I think there might be a reason, and maybe there is, you judge for yourself, that he is always a cameo and not a lead." Because I think it's very difficult to get beyond the sort of, the glasses, the wig, and the sort of carefully curated monosyllabic public performance. And then, so I said no. I had actually seen their Basquiat and Andy's collaboration remounted at the Whitney, and it was extraordinary. And I had all of the books, but I thought it wasn't a good idea. And then he sent me the diaries, and the diaries are dictated to Pat, his assistant, and he's clearly speaking in these long, circuitous sentences, which sound more like Truman Capote than the Andy Warhol that I had in my head. And I went, well, wait a second. So I started calling some people up that knew him, Candice Bergen, for instance, and the people that I spoke to said, no, he could be quite verbose in private. And so I went, well, maybe there's a way to do this. And I really didn't know until we did, we did that week of work on the script.
A workshop of the script. That was the first time we met, because we hadn't met before. And that was the day that we're referring to where he came in pretty much off book.
And I was blown away by Jeremy, and I went, you know what? Maybe there's a way to make this boat seaworthy, so it really was meeting Jeremy, and he was such a presence as he walked into the room, and I think weirdly he and I were both feeling the same way, like I'm not sure I should be here, and
right, yeah.
And I don't know, I totally fell in love with him as an artist, and I thought, well, actually, maybe there's a way through this.
And Jeremy, for you, did you have trepidations, like when you first read the play? Did you say yes right away, or?
I read the play, and I hopped on a Zoom with our director Kwame, our writer Anthony, and just talked about the idea, because I think what the script was at that time was more so an idea of what they wanted it to be. And it was conversations that they maybe could have had, and it was up to us to kind of come in and imbue it with style and heart and stakes, like just certain things like that. And Anthony was open to our interpretation of that. So for me, my process, when I met with them, I was excited about the opportunity. And then it was weird. It was like, Kwame, we were emailing, he was like, Spirit feels right, because Kwame, our director, he had worked with Dominique Morisseau, who wrote Ain't Too Proud, he knew Terrell McCraney, so it kind of felt like fam, like, oh, we know each other, everyone's looking out for each other, like this is gonna work itself out. And then everyone went radio silent on me. And I remember I was pretty butthurt about it, because I was like, I knew that they were meeting another actor. And that's the thing that gets in your head. So you're like, who is it? Who is it? You know what I mean? And so I probably know them. But it's that part of trusting the universe and trusting who's meant to be in the room will be in the room. I've had that is so much of being an artist, because there are things that are meant for you, and then there are things that are not. So I remember there was this coffee table book that I really wanted to get, which was that book that we have with all of their pictures of the time they spent together. And I was like, I'm not gonna buy it because I didn't get the job. That's how butthurt I was. But again, my story has always been life has to do what life has to do. And it was months later, it found its way back to me. And you don't really, at that point, you can't care about what happened in between. It's here now. Are you interested? Does it make sense in the timing? So it was let's have this workshop in New York. and let's see kind of how we all feel. That's what it was. It was to get me and Paul in a room to read the script out loud. We didn't want to do it virtually. And that's when I think the magic happened, because I fell in love with Paul and his way of approaching work and the openness. Kwame was brilliant and beautiful, had so many great ideas. And it was a huge ask to ask us to go, let's commit to this script and these roles for over a year. And they wanted the same actors for London, for the film, and for New York. So, that's, you kind of have to just surrender and trust. But I knew like in that workshop, watching him work, very similar to a way that I try to work and want to work and show up to the character. So I was like, if anything, there's going to be something to gain from just being around someone who does that. So thus the journey began.
Well, let's talk about that, because normally there's a first read-through, but you had a work session like for a week.
Yeah.
And we had missed all of this during COVID, so I can only imagine what it must have been like to have like the writer, the director, and the two of you in the room, all four of you, like discovering this piece.
Yeah.
So what was that week like for each of you?
Yeah, I'll start. I think it was like, those are my favorite. I love that time because it is like yes and. Everyone's throwing things in.
Yeah.
Anthony writes pretty fast, so he'll have a draft of a thing and then we're adding things, and it really is just playtime. And I love when everyone's in that space, because you really just kind of snowball off of each other. And we did the same thing for the movie. And I don't know, it's just very freeing to be in a space like that, where the writer is so generous and open, and the director, no one has an agenda. Yeah. It's all about trusting the people that are in the space. So I feel like that week definitely informed us when we started actual play rehearsals, because by then we were kind of already on our feet, and it was like we were starting to block the show. So you kind of are ahead of yourselves in a way where, you can just really start to do work and really start to understand more layers of the characters and the story and the why, and things that you maybe aren't seeing, and things that are underneath the page, things that you need to bring up.
No, I love that, because like you said, there was no agenda with anybody in that room. And I understand that Anthony would rewrite stuff after you two would work on things, right? Which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
Not every playwright does that.
No, not every playwright does that. Terrell McCraney was similar in that way. He would ask me, if it's not coming out of my mouth the right way, what do you want to say? And we would workshop that. And sometimes a lot of, Anthony did his thing, but some of the things that feel so nuanced and honest with these characters usually come best from the people that are playing them. So Paul would just say things that are brilliant, and there's no other way to say it but the way that he said it. So a lot of the time it was that collaboration and that process together, and him just being open to allowing us to do that, which he was.
Yeah. Did you want to add to that, Paul? Because like I said, you had not been on stage for a while, and this seemed like it was such a unique experience about how this show was put together.
Yeah, I think it was, and I think that yes, it felt like a real family or real friend group, I suppose, and that continued into the making of the movie. When we were converting it takes place in a very confined space, two different studios, my studio and then his studio, opening it up, and we all decided, everybody got on planes from London and LA, and we all converged. I have a house up in Vermont, country place, and I just got a bunch of food and a bunch of vino, and I was cooking for everybody, and we all sat and we just worked through the script and threw out ideas of things that we would want to see. If I was an audience member, what would I want to see Andy and Jean doing together? And again, Anthony was incredibly generous and open to that, and receptive. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have both worked with some of the best directors, including Kwame. What makes Kwame such a special and unique director?
His heart. His heart. He just cares. He's always cared from day one, and it sounds weird, but that sometimes feels rare. It's like people will pretend to care, you know, and that's fine. It's, you know, you learn how to navigate in the business through that. But to have a director that really cares and is genuine and that cares about the soul, I think for me, you know, it was me and him as far as Black men in this space, you know, so it was about making sure we're honoring Basquiat in a way that feels intentional and not like we're exploiting him and his heart, because he was so vulnerable and raw and honest. So I needed a director that was just going to be as raw and as vulnerable and as honest, you know, as this human was. And so I just credit his heart and his soul, because the thing that, you know, is very real and honest is this was his, you know, when we were making the film, this is his kind of first feature film.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's sometimes we go, well, how do I trust that? How do I know? But his intentions were always clear and his heart was always pure. And I feel like I can always trust that, because I know like that heart will inform all the right decisions, you know, like it will do the right thing when asked to. And that's what we felt. We felt taken care of. I mean, that's, you know, I think we felt the same. I know that we felt the same.
And I think he's a great storyteller, Kwame, and he never pretended. He's incredibly accomplished theatre director. You know, runs a house. I mean, he really is. And when we went into making the movie, he never pretended he knew more than he did, and that makes me feel safe. And so, you know, if he can come and ask me questions, Jeremy questions, and really canvass opinion, I think that's one of his great skills is listening. It's his vision. He will make the decision, but he absolutely, when he doesn't know, doesn't pretend to, and that makes me feel safe.
And he even did that when we were in rehearsals for the play.
Correct.
He's one of those directors, he doesn't give notes, he gives observations. And as an actor, like, then you're ready to hear it all. You know, where I feel like sometimes if someone has a note for you, you take it personal, because you've crafted it and you're like, he's not seeing what I'm doing and, you know, whatever. But for him to be like, this is an observation, and him to say it and go, well, you can use it or throw it away. Like, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And for him to trust us, to go like, well, on stage, you're gonna have to soar and figure it out. So I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. And I felt like that was such an interesting way for him to collaborate with a performance that feels so personal for both of us, because it really is him just kind of on the outskirts, almost like, you know, this kind of coach just watching you and going, try this with this, or try that and see how it feels. And then you try it and go, I didn't like the way it feels. He goes, great, all right, moving on. Like, you gotta love how it feels and you gotta find it for you. So that's something I remember early on, is it wasn't ever note sessions of him telling us what we did wrong or what he was looking for, which is like, this is what I observed. And most of the notes would just be like, you're brilliant, you're great, I loved that, do that again, love, like it would be that, you know? So that was very special in kind of creating this thing from the stage to the film and back to Broadway.
Yeah. Paul, your observations on Kwame?
Well, sort of, you know, like I said, my trust in him came from his honesty about the stuff that he didn't know, but also he always leads. He's a charmer, you know. You gotta be if you run a house, right? Yeah. But he's got to squeeze money out of all those donors. But he always, when giving you a note, leads with a positive, and then is really honest about, so, you know, if you disagree and he says, well, what is it you're trying to do in that moment? And saying, it's really not landing for me in that way. Can we, and I just feel safe when I feel that somebody isn't intimidated by me, frightened by what my response might be, you know, or frightened by my pushback. He's always really honest. There was a speech that I give at the end of the play, and he says, I'm going to cut the speech. And I went, I really wish you wouldn't. And he said, well, why? And I said, well, for two reasons. One, I haven't worked on that yet, you know, and I don't think you've seen the potential of what it could be. And also, when I first read the script, this was the speech that made me say yes to doing it. He went, "That's good enough for me." He went, "If that's it, that's good enough for me. Let's move on. We don't need to talk about it any longer." And I was like, "Really?" And he went, "I mean, because if you really," he went, "No. If this is the reason you wanted to do this play, it's staying in there." And I just felt endlessly supported by him. You know,
The whole watching the show, it just seems so organic, what you all went through. It's so beautiful. I wish you could step out of yourselves and watch yourselves work of what we saw. If you haven't seen the collaboration, it's been extended again through February 11th. It's one of the most brilliant pieces of work you'll see with 4 brilliant actors. I mean, talk a second about your two fellow, the other two people in your show.
Yeah, which is, they're great. Krista Rodriguez.
Eric.
Yeah.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
'Cause I can't imagine, like, it was like 2 days after we had wrapped the movie, we're coming in this space, and I wanted to be very sensitive to, like, not saying, like, this is what we did. Yeah. We used to do this. It was like, what are we going to do? Like, bring them a part of the family so that they can feel like they can ask questions and make choices and learn. Because it's like, yeah, we're off book, but you don't have to, like, that doesn't have to be your journey. Like, let's find this together. And they came in, like, ready to do their scenes, and like they were so over prepared in a way that allowed us to find new things and to play. And I remember us just being, especially with Krista and Eric, but Krista was making these choices with this character that was so thrilling, because it's like this character was still evolving itself after I had seen it, you know, in London and then in the film, and each actress has done it so different. So that was beautiful to kind of witness. And, you know, they're just lovely. And we huddle up right before, you know, we go out every night and we talk about who's the show for, what are we doing it for, what do we want to think about? Because while me and Paul spend the most time on stage, we know that it's all of us pulling this thing together, you know, and I never for a moment want to think that it's just me and Paul, or it's just me. Like, it truly is your cast and your crew making this happen, you know what I mean? So I feel very grateful that they joined on yes and amen, and they were ready to, like, join the family and help us be the best versions of ourselves in this iteration of it.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to add to that? I mean, having those two now for the Broadway run?
Well, sort of everything Jeremy just said. I think it's a hard task to come in and play those parts. I think Krista is uniquely equipped to be able to. It's a very. If you've seen has anybody seen the play?
Oh yeah.
It's a very hard part. She comes in hot, and she comes in and she has two really opposing intentions, and to be able to play those two things at once is really difficult and high level stuff. And I think she's so extraordinary, and it changes every night what she does, and so committed, you know, to the role and the era, and really sensitive to what the vagaries of being a woman in that milieu at that time were. You know, I've loved working with them both, and I agree with what Jeremy is saying, which is seeing different people play those parts whilst you're sort of continuing on has been really revelatory, in that you get to see these entirely different interpretations that all have worth and meaning, and still you know, chime with what we're doing. So yeah, it's been amazing.
That's great. You know, Warhol and Basquiat are such larger-than-life, iconic figures. Were there a few specific things you could mention that set you on your path to discovering them and bringing them to life on stage? Like you said, there's books and there's so much available on them. It's like, where do you begin? What do you do? Right. How do you put it in? How do you put Basquiat into Jeremy? How do you put Warhol into Paul? Right. What were those specific things at sort of at different points?
For me, I have a thing that I do when I approach it, which is, what do I want? And we all know that. We all know that that's what actors, you know, work on, is what does the character want? What's their objective and all of that. But also, what are they really scared of? And what makes them feel safe? And And for me, more than any other character I've played, the what are they scared of and what makes them feel safe is the thing that gave me whatever my version of Warhol is that his relevancy has saved him from being terrified. And I think it's hard for, unless you're over 60 or an art historian, to understand how much Warhol has changed the way the world looks in terms of graphic design and everything. He made himself into a star. His fear, I think, was so powerful that he changed the world into viewing him as a star. And now there's this young man chasing his heels, and that is terrifying. That obscurity is I think, terrifying for I don't know if it's the truth, and why would you ever let the truth get in the way of a good story? So my version of it is, that he is just terrified of slipping back into being this little boy. I mean, imagine what life was like for the young Andy Warhol in Pittsburgh. Imagine. So what are you scared of, and what makes you feel safe? For me.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Jeremy, for you.
For me, it's always interesting how you find your way in of notable figures and people, that audiences have connection with. But for me, it's always soul, it's always heart, and especially Basquiat. So you have the art, but you go, what is his art trying to say? And I think he had a very direct connection from mind, heart, and soul to canvas. You can often see words reflected on canvas, crossed out, political statements, artist, boxers, like whatever he was feeling in said moment. So you kind of, for me, you look at the art and you interpret and you imagine. And, you read the books, you see the interviews, you do all those things. And I think it's whatever is resourceful for you and helps you, And so the art was a big thing for me. And then his family has put up King Pleasures here in the city. And I just went there so many times, I think like over 15 times. Anytime we were free or I had time, I would just go and I would sit in that space. This is a space that was curated with his art, but by his sisters, and it's how his family wants us to remember him. And I feel like we already know how the world wants us to see Basquiat, and hip hop and culture has done the Basquiat thing. There's the locks and there's this and but I'm like, how was he, who was he as a son? Who was he as a brother? Who was he as a cousin? Like, how do they remember him? And I feel like those people, those family members, your chosen family members, they usually know the most unfiltered version of you. So I would go in that space and just take things and try to let that inform my performance and the words and the text and the stakes and the situation. I can imagine, or I can imagine a little bit, just being a Black artist taking space in a predominantly white industry and the cost of that, and being so vulnerable and being so rare, and how a lot of people will want to just take as much as they can. And you ultimately knowing they'll do this thing and then they'll just find the next thing to take out. So you kind of surrender to this idea of being chosen because it feels nice to be chosen. You spend a lot of your time as artists, as actors, as creatives, feeling the need to be chosen because that changes where your comma goes, or that changes how many health weeks you have. It's a very real thing. It's survival as an artist. So that sometimes contradicts with heart and soul and what you feel. So I feel like he wrestled with that, how to stay honest and true, but lean into this fantasized idea of art and the exploitation of art and exploitation of graffiti. And so that was my way in, and ultimately just trying to stay as honest as I could with this gentle soul that is mysterious. I think even in reading books and watching videos, I don't think you can say, oh, that's Basquiat, you know what I mean? Or he was always this way. I think he was just a unicorn, if you will.
See, but what I also loved about the show is you showed us the human side of both these men. like you said, what Warhol was afraid of, and seeing this young one come in who may, take the crown away or whatever else, and then you're trying to find your way. And it's quite fascinating to watch. And that's what I loved, that you play these larger than life people, but you show the human side of them, like what was him as a son like? What was Warhol afraid of? That's what I loved about this show the most, was just the human side you show of both these gentlemen and how they found themselves into each other.
Yeah.
To work together and collaborate.
Right.
Let's talk about wigs, hair, makeup, and costume. Because, wait, just look at the pictures of them in the photos for those of you who have not seen this yet. How that played into you defining your characters and the input you wanted to have into of how you wanted like the hair to be and everything else. Talk about that.
Yeah. Go.
Yeah. Well, it was very different in London.
Yeah. Oh, was it?
We had different wigs, and I think I've worked with the same wig person for all my career, a woman called Carol Robinson. She's extraordinary. Directors are often very frightened of wigs. They say, no, I hate wigs, and I can always see them, and I always think, no, you can only see the ones that are bad, and you've missed all the ones that are great. And so we did a thing in London, and then she was always kind of disappointed in it, and then for this, she actually got in touch with the Warhol Museum and got to see how the actual wigs were constructed and made them exactly the same. So they're the half human hair and they're half yak belly hair, if anybody's interested. That's what it is. It was really important to me, and it became important for the film because we wanted to sort of get into further, what's Andy look like without a wig, for instance. Nobody knows. So it was great to get into all of that stuff, and we were able to do. I had a great prosthetics team, which we can't do in the theatre, but the work that they did in the film is really extraordinary. And for me, it's important in that you want to get as close visually as you can, in the same manner in which you're striving to get close emotionally and intellectually with the character. Why not? Why not provide that? And so now, because of the film, we have the use of 3 wigs during one play, and that's been great. But I also know you felt very strongly about hair and
yeah, it's particular. I mean,
we changed a lot from London for both of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think London for us was, everyone was just trying to figure out what is this thing that we're doing. So we were really in the script. Like, I remember it was like costume fittings were late, hair fittings, because we were just spending all of our time into what is this baby, what is this thing? And then once we got to kind of step away and go, okay, visually what happens? And we added the DJ, and we're like, what does that look like? And our costumes, we got to the world started to inform itself a little bit more. But I was always very particular about the wigs. And that's just because I've, working in this industry, sometimes working with black hair is hard and not everyone knows how to do that. So you always want to flag it early. So it's like, because I know that sometimes people just don't know a black stylist. They don't know. It's not like you can just call them. They got to ask a friend who knows a friend who has a homie. It's like such a process. So I'm like, let's start this process now. Like, call who you need to call to figure it out. You know what I mean? So that I don't have to take the L for that. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to be on stage looking crazy. Real talk. You know what I mean? So, but when we got to the movie and they knew that I was passionate about that, we were able to find this woman, Karen, who really just, she came over to my house, and I remember she was braiding my hair down, and she was like, "You trust me?" And I was like, "You trust me?" And she was like, "Yeah." So we're like, we're gonna go on this journey together, because the thing about, Jean's hair is, it was free locks. So that's not really a style, that just grows from the hair. So you're like, how do you style something that isn't styled? And how do we, there's so much history behind when people decide to grow their hair out and why they choose to do free locks and how that informs strength and him being Haitian. Like, we just wanted to get into that. So she was running through Harlem. We were in New York. We were asking friends and homies, and we knew we got it right when we had a fitting. We put the wig on, And she sent it to a home, he didn't say anything. And they were like, how long has he been growing his locks? And they just thought it was growing from my hair. So that's when we were like, all right, we're ready to camera test. And that was literally the day before I camera test. So it was like up until the last kind of hour, we were working to make sure that it didn't feel like a character on top of me. It needed to feel like it was a part of me. And yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of the wigs. I think they're great. And like you said, it brings you closer. Because I think with someone like Jean and Andy, that's what people want to see. So when we come on stage and we look like them, they're like, okay, I'm in. And then they're down to go on this like excavation journey that we're going to do of the heart and soul. But I feel like it'd be harder to do that if the wig was bad, or they're like, I can see, you know, like then you're dealing with other things. So shout out to our team for really spending the hours and money to make sure that it was right.
It's flawless to look because you get lost when you see the piece. You think Jean-Michel is on stage, you think Andy Warhol is on stage, and I've been following both of them for my whole entire career, like the Liza Minnellis, you know, the Warhols. I'm obsessed with him. And I'm watching the show and I'm like, wait a minute, it's not Andy Warhol, it's Paul Bettany. But it's like, you know,
right.
You take us on this incredible journey, and I know that was very important for both of you, that the look was perfect. Right. You both have to paint in the show, and you paint the pictures all over again. What was that process like for both of you?
Tell me about your painting.
Yeah, I get off very lightly in the painting ratio. You have a lot.
You can probably show them right here how you.
Yeah, I just go like this.
Yeah.
A little bit of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I do a little bit of that. Looks similar.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, so it's 127 shows
That we've done.
Yeah. So you've done 127 of those paintings.
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
And they must exist somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then including all the ones that we did during
Rehearsals
and the movie.
A lot of painting.
A lot
of painting. Because
man has a lot of painting to do.
No, in Act 1 we paint, but it's imagined, and then in Act 2 I really take the paint to the canvas. And I remember when we first started rehearsing that, I was like, I was terrified. It was just so much to think about because I'm not a painter. I am now, but I wasn't a painter, so I was just like trying to think about the lines and what's my character doing, and then you're just like, you need me to paint. How much? Gosh. You know what I mean? And then they're like, and then we're gonna film it and show the audience. Why would you do that? Like, leave a little room for error. You know what I mean? Like, but it's actually really thrilling, and it. I love that we recreate this moment, and you kind of watch it. It feels like, I don't know, when I used to come to New York years ago, you'd be like in Times Square and watching those guys do like the paintings of like space, and you're just like so enamored by their process. So I love that we kind of further go into the way that Jean approaches the canvas and how in this heightened moment he's able to kind of bring things to life and watch.
And I love that it's held back till then.
Yeah,
till
I think
the
it's
second,
earned.
till the end of the second, the last act, because Kwame was really. He didn't want us. He said, "I don't care about the art. I want the audience. I want the youngest person in the audience to go, I'm going to look up Basquiat," and you know what I mean. I want to know them and their heart and their minds it's sort of the law of diminishing returns. What are you going to do? Paint as well as Basquiat on stage? You're not. You know what I mean? Or paint as well as Andy Warhol on stage? You're not. But we can get you close to imagining that's what they're doing. And I think the delayed gratification of finally seeing him paint was an incredibly smart decision of Kwame's to resist. There's the temptation to always have the locked off top shot of, I don't know, Pollock painting or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, I get it. He was, I get it. I want to see him not painting. I want to see Andy Warhol not painting. I want to see Basquiat not painting. What are they like in those moments that we know nothing about? So I thought that was really a smart decision of Kwame's, because of course neither myself or Jeremy are ever going to be able to produce that for real. It's just,
Yeah. Is it freeing for you Jeremy,
Yeah.
when you're up there doing that now?
Yeah, it's freeing, and it just kind of allows me, Jeremy, to step into this, like, the mind of Jean of just trusting. I feel like it's so easy as an artist to be a perfectionist and want things to go a specific way, but to leave room for it to flow and to find itself. And that was the only way that Jeremy was gonna get through painting every night, it's gonna look different, it's gonna feel different. Because it was, well, what paint do I need? And you almost want someone to go, you grab this paint and then you do that, you use this crayon. But it was like, I had to find that. And they're kind of scattered around the stage. So it became a part of the blocking of like, what do I need? And how do I want to do this? And when do I want to do it? And when do I want to? So like that freedom was nice to explore and to trust myself that I would find it and that the painting would get done. You know, there was no rush, that we would have the time. And if not, we'd go back and rehearse it and make sure it was right. So, I actually don't think about it anymore. It's kind of like we get to act 2 and then I'll be in the middle of like, oh my God, I'm painting, like Pascal, again, you know what I mean? And we've had some people that have actually bought the paintings, which I didn't know was a thing, but they bought and I guess the money goes to the Actors Fund. Yeah. And that's cool because I've gone to the stage door and they're like, have this canvas of the night. And they asked me to sign it. So that's been pretty cool. So that's why I feel like I can now put it on my resume, like I do paint, for real.
I love that. As we close out here, Paul, I want to thank you because of your work in the Marvel universe. There are many people who are like, oh, I know him from these films. He does something called live theater. And you're introducing them to this whole new world, which it happened to us from a TV person we knew or a film person. And I want to thank you for introducing a whole new audience coming to the theater for the first time, because I know you're from another medium.
Well, that's kind. Thank you very much.
That must make you feel really good, does it? That you're introducing people to the world of theater?
Yeah, it does. And you know, I think it's, it's really gratifying for me. You know, sometimes I'll talk to young actors and I say, so what are you interested in doing? They say, I want to be a superhero. And I just think, oh man, you'll notice that Kevin Feige is casting classically trained actors a lot of the time in these roles because it takes a lot to shoulder this stuff up the hill. So I think it's, what I hope, I mean, I don't think about it much, but now you've mentioned it, but I hope those kids, if they are coming because they like the vision in in Marvel, is they come in and they feel inspired to maybe look at this business in a different way that isn't only business, you know, and feel inspired to push themselves and stretch ourselves in the same way that I think Jeremy and I have. It was so sweet what you said, but I want you to know that absolutely the feeling is reciprocated to have been stretched and have those muscles trained again has been a real gift. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here. You have a show tonight.
We have a show tonight.
Thank you once again for joining me. The collaboration has been extended again today. We're extended now through February 11th at Manhattan Theater Club's Samuel J. Friedman Theater. Some of the finest actors you're going to see. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Jeremy Pope, Paul Bettany.
Thank you.